what I'd like to do is really hopefully talk with you guys about the issue of parenting. The good news about parenting is I am an expert. I have 4 kids. They have all grown up and moved away, which is the definition of what makes you an expert with parenting. When your kids grow up, move away, it's like, man, you're off the hook, at least till grandkids come around. The concept of parenting is one that often I think creates a lot of frustration in parents, especially when you have little kids and you struggle with what to do with them. And so what I'd like to do is sort of give you some guidelines and also steer you to 2 resources that have been extremely helpful to me. Telling my story, we have 4 kids. They are all 2 years apart, and they're all probably worse behaved than their parents were, or at least worse behaved than their father ever was. And so growing up, I had lots of experience raising kids, trying to figure out what not to do. And like many of you, when my kids were little, I remember distinctly thinking, I want kids that when I say jump, say how high on the way up. And I thought, that's what I want for kids. And that's because I was raised by a parent who was a drill sergeant, my father, which is what most of us men probably have the tendency to be. And a drill sergeant says, okay, you know, here's when to get up, here's when to go to bed, here's the dress of the day, here's what you're going to eat, here's what you're going to do, and I want everything done 5 minutes ago. And our wives and many mothers tend to be more of a helicopter-style parent, and helicopter-style parents are parents who are there hovering, rescuing their kids. They're the parents who are making sure that, you know, their child has no problems in life. They're getting out their clothes. If the kid doesn't want macaroni and cheese for supper, yes, I'm happy to make a hot dog for you. If you don't want a hot dog, I'll make macaroni and cheese. If you don't want either, I'll make whatever else works out. And mothers are much more likely to be forgiving, not forgetful, forgiving and forgetting of their kids' behaviors, and us fathers aren't. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, I actually always try to give out handouts. When they asked me about the talk, they said, just email me your PowerPoint presentation, and I said, I don't do PowerPoint presentations. But what I try to do with everybody is give you a handout to sort of give you an overview of what I'm going to talk about, and also give you something that hopefully you can go back to and refer to. When our own children were 7th grade, 5th grade, 3rd grade, and 1st grade, my wife and I got frustrated. It felt like all we were doing was screaming and yelling at the kids. Every Saturday night, we had this Saturday night bonding activity, which is called Clean Up the Mess in the Basement. And we were frustrated at our parenting, and we actually went off to a week-long summer parenting class, where we were in class 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, and they had a daycare program for the kids that we sort of plowed all the kids into. And we came home and completely revamped our parenting strategies. That plus my knowledge of things, some other programs and things. In fact, I probably own 20 books on raising kids at home. And in fact, when I'd come home and I'd see 2 or 3 of these books open, I could know, uh-oh, my wife didn't have a good day with the kids. And so I better tiptoe lightly. And so what I want to talk about parenting is strategies that I think can make parenting fun. In fact, I think as we become better about parenting, instead of getting frustrated, angry, or upset, which is, I think, the first tendency many of us have when our kids misbehave, we can actually look at our kids' misbehaving as SLOs, or significant learning opportunities, okay? And so when I'm just waiting for them to misbehave because I can drop a new technique on them or turn it around, then I think we become much more effective parenting. And as my kids grew up, I became amazed, because one of the strategies in parenting is to raise responsible kids that are going to make good decisions for themselves as they got older. And I will tell you, I have been amazed at some of the decisions my kids made going through high school that I would have never made, but I go, you know, that was a pretty good decision you make. And by trying to make my kids much more responsible. One author that one of the very first books I liked on discipline, I liked him because he talked about a 3-legged stool. In fact, I use the 3-legged stool concept a lot in medicine. But there is a 3-legged stool of raising kids that has to do with one leg being love. Kids need to grow up knowing they have unconditional love, no matter how good they are, how bad they are. We always love our kids. I don't always like what they're doing, but I always love my kids, and no matter how bad they are, I always want to be sure I'm sending that message to my kids. Second leg of raising kids is discipline. Kids need to grow up knowing that there are rules, guidelines, that they are expected to follow things, and trying to raise kids without providing that is what someone called jellyfish parenting. Jellyfish parenting is, jellyfish is, you know, whatever way the wind blows, the jellyfish goes. Kid does this, that's not a problem. Kid does that's not a problem. The other kind of parenting that I think falls into that category without providing that is the kind of what I used to call the absentee parenting, and that were parents who had kids but still were really involved with often bowling in the fall, dartball, baseball, and had kids that largely grew up without parental supervision that they needed. And obviously a stool that doesn't have a leg that's entitled discipline is also a problem. And the third leg on that stool of raising kids is one that's called independence. When we parent our children, and our children are very little, what's the most important thing we do? Probably protection, right? When you're little kids, you know, don't put your fingers in the fan, don't play with the electric cord, don't eat the Christmas ornaments, and protection becomes the part of raising very little kids. However, as kids become older, if we are, as parents, stuck in that part of parenting that's worrying about protecting them, then we're going to spend all kinds of time making decisions for them so that they don't mess up and screw up. And as all of you know, when do we learn our best lessons in life? It's often when we mess up and screw up. And so the third leg of raising kids needs to be independence, and that's one that I think a lot of parents, especially the mothers that tend to be helicopter types, worry about. And so I think that's a concept to keep in the back of our head. The other thing that I often tell parents is when we have kids, we have to remember that we are a parent to our kids first, a friend to our kids second, and often we can't be both at the same time. That you can be a friend or you can be a parent, and I think the parent always trumps the friendship. Most of the time, I think we can be parents and friends to our kids first, but I think it's important for us to remember that, you know, in discipline, and by discipline I always mean education. Discipline is teaching kids what's right and what's wrong, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. It's not punishment. Punishment is sort of the an eye for an eye, you did this, take that, whack, or you know, there are lots of people, the 1, 2, 3 magic, I think, defines it as something like the talk, argue, persuade, yell, hit set of steps that we go down as we get more frustrated with our kids. And when we move into parenting with our kids, my goal is to say, how can I be an effective parent for whatever time period my child is in life? The easiest one is small kids, and I call that the German Shepherd parenting. When kids are little, they need to learn German Shepherd. And basic German Shepherd is simple. Sit, stay, come, go, stop, right? We can train a dog to do it. You can train your kids to do it by about a year of age. I have often seen kids that are 2 and 3 years of age that don't have basic German Shepherd down. And the mom's in the office with this kid for a well-child checkup, and the kid is tearing my office apart, and the mom's going, stop that, and the kid doesn't even wink or slow down. And so I think it is important when kids are little that we teach them basic German Shepherd. I also think because that part of life is about safety and protection, you know, it's not, I don't want to say to my child, well, let's see how you do with independence. There's a semi coming down the road, see what your chances are making it across the road ahead of it. You know, you can't offer kids opportunities that might be dangerous for them. And so you want to know that your little kids have learned that basic German Shepherd, sit, stay, come, go, and stop. And the corollary of that is a lot of parents will get frustrated because they say, I tell my kids, you know, 10 times to do it and they don't stop. There's 2 comments I make. One is if you have a daughter and she's like a normal daughter, you tell her, no, don't touch the electric plug twice, and she'll never touch it again. If you have a well-behaved son, you tell him 10 times, don't touch the electric plug before it soaks in. And if you have kids like my second son, You tell him 100 times, don't touch the electric plug, before he finally gives up and realizes that that's not something he can do. And so I think with girls, it's probably somewhere between 2 and 10 times to tell them that. And with boys, it's somewhere between 10 and 100. And people often, and I know we did, got frustrated with that. And then I popped into my head the alphabet song. How many times are you willing to sing your child the alphabet song till they learn it? 2 times, 10 times? No. All of us would say as many times as it takes for them to learn it. And I think we have to, with parenting, be as patient, teaching kids what's right and what's wrong, what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, as we are with teaching them the alphabet song. And I think when people feel frustrated, they think, all right, and I will tell you, I think I was in kindergarten, I thought LMNOP was a word in the middle of the first letters and the last letters, and about 3rd grade I realized it wasn't. And so, so I think the issue is with parenting, we need to have that same degree of patience. And I know sometimes that is hard for all of us to take, especially those of us who grew up in different parenting styles. Now, once we get our kids through the basic German Shepherd stage, then we end up with tougher times. As kids enter that 2nd year of life, they become faster, they're smarter, they're more devious, or more creative. In fact, the purpose of a 2-year-old is to see how far I can go and how fast I can get there, which is real similar to what the purpose of a teenager is to say how far can I get away and how quick can I get there. And the only difference between 2-year-olds and teenagers is really the level of their hormones and the wheels underneath them. And so when kids in that small age, what I think has been the absolute most successful parenting program is one called 1-2-3 Magic. 1-2-3 Magic is a program that was devised by a psychologist, Dr. Tom Phelan, who actually lives in the Chicago area and has given talks around. And there's a lot of daycares, preschools, and things that have used the 1-2-3 Magic. And the 1-2-3 Magic is a simple program that I think emphasizes a couple things. The first one is that as parents, and I'm a good one to say, as parents we tend to talk too much, okay? And so a lot of us as parents look at our 2-year-olds and we treat them like they were young adults. And so we try to explain why they should do something or why they shouldn't do something. And the truth is, what we're doing is we're treating them as little adults, and they don't have the ability to reason. In fact, little kids don't reason well. They sort of learn things concretely. They learn that, if you drop something on your toe, it hurts. That's a concrete thing. They aren't able to understand concepts and things we often as parents try to explain to them. And the hallmark of the 1-2-3 Magic is to treat kids as if they were wild animals, not kids. And if you talk about a wild animal trainer, what do? They pick some task and they repeat it and they repeat it and they repeat it. And they're not explaining to the lion, when I hold the chair up, I want you to stand on your back legs or something. They keep doing things and they reward good behaviors, or they punish bad. They not punish. They try to redirect the behaviors they don't want. I often use the example when we had a puppy. Our puppy pooped on the floor. I rubbed its nose in it, kicked it out the door. I didn't explain to him why pooping on the floor wasn't a good thing. And it worked for my puppy. Now, I wouldn't suggest you necessarily do it for your kids, but the principle of no talking is an important one in the 1-2-3 Magic. And so the way the 1-2-3 Magic operates in a real quick nutshell is, when your kid misbehaves, you say, that's a 1. Give them a little time, hoping they'll stop misbehaving. If they don't, you say, that's a 2. A little bit longer, and kids give us plenty of opportunities to do 1, 2, and 3. You say, that's a 3, take a time out. And there is no talking about what they do. You take the kid, you encourage them to their bedroom, you carry them to their bedroom, whatever you need to do to get to their bedroom, put them in the bedroom, shut the door, and say, you can come out when you're quiet for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. A lot of people do a minute for a year on timeout for kids. Bedrooms work. When my wife grew up, there was this white rocking chair that she said was the timeout chair when she grew up. Somehow that chair never fit into the furniture in my house. It's in the attic, and I think there's enough emotions about that chair that my wife has never been comfortable to have that down. But I think it can be any place you put your kid, but they put the kid there. And the nice thing about if you start out doing timeouts when kids are 2 years old, with year and a half, 2, somewhere there, it's reasonable to expect that they're going to be there. It's pretty tough to take a 10-year-old kid and say, go to your room, and he says, make me. So I think you'd like to start these strategies on kids when they're fairly little. The other nice thing about the 1, 2, 3 Magic program is it really talks about how to do timeouts. A lot of people will tell timeout. Some people say when kids get out of timeout, you give them a big hug and kiss and tell them, you know, I love you, and, you know, we're not going to do that again. The kids go, no, I'm not going to do that again, waiting till he can. Or some people say when they get out of timeout, you know, now you sit down, you program, you go through the whole process. Now, the reason we put you in timeout is because you did this. And the 1, 2, 3 Magic says, you know what? We learn by our mistakes. There are not many kids that drop things on their toes repeatedly. They go, ouch, that hurt. I'm not going to do that again. And so if they realize every time I want to argue with my parents, every time I want to touch the electric cords, every time I want to climb on the table, I get put into timeout for 5 minutes, it does lose its appeal doing that. And I think it's the consistency that teaches the lesson. Kids are smart enough. Pets are smart enough. In fact, it probably even works on husbands. Husbands are smart enough that, you know, if you get the same consequence of your actions and it's not one you're particularly looking forward to, then you'll change your behavior and you don't have to tell them about it. The 1, 2, 3 Magic is actually divided into the 1, 2, 3 part, which is the first half of the program. That's called stop behaviors, or getting kids to stop doing what you don't want them to. The second half of the 1, 2, 3 program is actually what are called start behaviors, or getting kids to do what you want to do. And I'm actually going to ignore that part of the program today because for 2 reasons. One, because I think in the interest of time I can talk for 3 hours. I could talk for 3 hours, but I'm not sure my voice would make it. And number 2, we're actually going to put on a 1, 2, 3 program, I think it's in May this year, to try to just do a program talking about that age group and that program. The one thing I think the 1, 2, 3 Magic does is it lets you discipline your kid without getting emotionally involved. And in fact, the other part of effective parenting with 1, 2, 3 Magic is no talking and no emotions, because so often we get emotional when our kids are misbehaving. I used to think, knowing what I know, I'd watch my son play basketball and I know my heart was pounding and my blood pressure was somehow like 200. And if he would foul somebody or miss a shot or whatever, my blood pressure was 240 and my heart rate was 180 or something. And he'd sit on the bench and my best friend's kid would be out there playing and he'd foul somebody or he'd miss a shot and my heart didn't pound and my blood pressure, I don't think, went up. And I think how amazing that I can't control my physiologic response from my own kid to my best friend's kid. The 1, 2, 3 Magic tries to steer us emotionally to treating our kids as if they're our best friend's kids so that we don't get so emotionally involved. For 2 reasons. Number 1, as a parent, I want my brain working, and when we get emotionally involved, our brains often stop working, and a lot of times we do things that we say, I wish I hadn't. Number 2, I think we're much more effective if we can model to our kids that I can discipline you, I have the power, I have the authority, and I don't even have to get worked up about it. In fact, as we move on, and when you get to the stage of waiting for your kids to have SLOs, you got this grin in your face because you think, oh, I can see one coming. So you actually can get to the point of enjoying realizing that I have a strategy to handle whatever behavior my kid throws at me. The ovals I put on the bottom of the page, often parents, if you draw a circle and say divide it into how much time you spend disciplining your kids and how much time you have fun, I think a lot of people would say I spend a lot more time disciplining, I spend a lot more of my energy disciplining, and a lot less time having fun. I think the goal, the 1, 2, 3 Magic, one of the goals that Tom Phelan talks about is, I want people to have fun with their kids and have a little part of your time spent doing the discipline issues. Emphasis on timeouts is no talking, no emotions, put them in timeout. When they get out, it's like nothing ever happened. I don't think there's any reason to sit and talk with kids about that. Don't review what they did badly. Don't tell them what they should do. Kids will learn And if their kid's worth their salt, they may challenge you 2 or 3 times to make sure you are consistent on that task, or 5 times. But I think that's it. Now, a couple other tricks. What do you do if your kid won't go to timeout? The good news is most of us are bigger than our kids, so you can put your kid under your arm, put them in timeout. What if they don't stay in your bedroom? A lot of times you start the 1, 2, 3 magic when kids are small enough that a gate will still keep them in the bedroom. If a gate doesn't work, one of my strategies that I actually like is to take and tie a broom to the door of bedrooms, and I talk to a lot of parents about this. I personally don't like the idea of locking a kid's bedroom door. And there are some people say, well, you can take the doorknobs off, turn them around and put them back on the door, and it's pretty easy to do, so that the button's on the outside of the door, so you can lock somebody in a bedroom. I personally don't like that idea of being locked in a room. Some people have said, well, drill holes and put one of those chain locks so that the kid can pull the door open 2 inches but can't get out. I don't want to look at holes in my door for the rest of my life, reminding me how much difficulty. But one strategy that I have devised and have parents use is you can take a broom, tie it to a doorknob. All bedroom doors open into the bedroom, right? They always do. I don't know why, but they always do. So you could take a broom, tie it to the doorknob. If you tie it just right, the kid can pull the door open 2 inches, see out, but he can't get out, right? So you've got the kid in the bedroom. It just becomes a gate for bigger kids that are bigger and smarter. And so you can tie a broom to the door, kind of put it against the door. A kid tries to pull the door open, it comes open 2 inches, but he can't get out. So you've got your kid in his room for that. And I often will use that when I have sleep problems and older kids that won't stay in their bedrooms. I'll use that broom on the door to help us keep a kid in their bedroom when it's bedtime. And we can talk about that later if you like. I do think sometimes there are kids that get so upset that you really do need to have a bedroom child-proofed. And so I have parents that I've said, you know what, if you put a little wooden stick over the door, over the windows, the kid can't open the windows. There are little plates you can put over electrical outlets that are solid that completely plug the outlets, so if you're worried about a kid getting in an outlet or whatever, you really can child-proof your kid's room so that no matter what. And if a kid goes in his room while they're timing out, they're trashing the room so the mattress is on the floor and the bedding is all there, that's not a problem for me. It may be a problem for them when they want to go to sleep that night, but it certainly is not a problem for me. And so if the child trashes his room, I'd probably leave it that way until they seem to be upset by it. When you move into the 1, 2, 3 magic, you really want to train your kids that 1, 2, 3 means there's a consequence coming. And so the suggestion is we actually time kids out for every little misbehavior. And so when people start the program, it's kind of encouraged to time kids on a frequent basis. That way they will learn that when mom says 1 or dad says 1, that's a 2, that's a 3, that means a consequence is coming. If you have a really good kid, you only have to say that's a 1 or that's a 2, the kid's going, what's this 1 and 2 stuff about? So you really want kids to learn the consequences. When kids get older, and in fact I often see a lot of people get upset about kids' behavior that I consider very normal behavior. For example, little kids fighting. I have never met a kid yet that's come into my office and said, Doc, I got a problem. My 3-year-old's wanting to fight with me and we wrestle on the floor until my mom gets really upset. Can you help me keep my mom from getting so upset? No, the problem I have is a mom comes in and says, I'm going crazy, my kids wrestle all the time. And I'm like, that's normal behavior for kids. And so sometimes what we would like as parents, we need to step back and go, that's really normal behavior for kids. And so I think as kids get older, one can back off and just time out the things that are important. But it really is a good technique to help kids improve their behaviors, to get them to stop doing what you don't want them to do. And the flip side of it is, if you get kids to stop doing what you don't want them to do, it's also easy to get kids to start doing what you do want them to do. The third phase that I have found to be particularly effective is a phase called Love and Logic. And Love and Logic was invented by a school psychologist, Dr. Jim Fay, and a psychiatrist, Dr. Foster Klein. And I've heard Jim Fay speak several times. In fact, he was one of the keynote speakers when my wife and I went off for a week-long meeting. And although I own a whole bunch of books, everything from extreme, in fact, I forgot, I was bicycling, I found this horse riding crop. It is really awful looking. And I couldn't even imagine using it on a horse. but I thought, oh, I should bring that as a parenting thing of this is a way not to raise your kids. There are people who are on that extreme end of spare the rod, spoil the child. And that end of the spectrum is what I call the punishment spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, I think, was what a lot of people think of with Dr. Spock. Dr. Spock, I think in one stage in his life was like, you know, we shouldn't have to discipline our kids. Just love our kids and they're going to learn what's right and what's wrong by osmosis. And I think we've sort of realized that Dr. Spock, parents really need that third leg of the parenting stool, love, independence, and discipline. And the spare the rod, spoil the child philosophy. I think if you're bigger and you hit your kid, you teach your kid that if you're bigger and you hit somebody, you win the battle. And I think there are way too many people in the world that walk around thinking if I carry a big stick and hit somebody, I win the battle. And that's not the message I want kids to grow up with. And so I really am not in favor of spanking as part of punishment. I'm not in favor of punishment as part of parenting at all. True confession, did I ever spank my kids? Yes. Did I ever feel good about doing it afterwards? No. Did I often do that when I lost my head because I became too emotional raising my kids? Absolutely. I still regret it to this day. There are some things that I do think are sometimes helpful. In other words, if you have a kid that is going to look at you and is going to reach for that plug to see what you're going to do, I do this, I go flick and flick their hands, okay? And what I do, that startles the kid. I actually tell breastfeeding moms to do it to the kid's cheek. You get bit when the kid's 6 months old, you just got their first tooth, you're not gonna be a happy breastfeeder, but if you do this, the kid goes, whoa, what was that? And you can do this pretty quick to a kid. It is not punishment. In fact, often when we spank the kids, what we do, I told you not to do that. And so what we're doing is we're taking out our frustrations on our kid. The education process is gone. It is pure, I am mad, angry, and you're going to be the brunt of it. And that's where I really try to get away from discipline. But I do flip kids, and I have, done a slap. And the benefit of that is it gives a split second where you have that kid's 100% attention. And so if a kid's reaching a button, you go whack on his finger, not whack, that's a bad term, go flick on their finger. The kid's like, whoa, what was that? You can say, I told you, you don't touch the television cord, whatever. Your kid's going to run out into the street and there's a semi coming. That's not the time to have a discussion about his chances. That's the time to make sure that basic German Shepherd is well grounded. And if a swat on a diaper helps enforce that or gets their attention, I think that's reasonable. But I think one should never do anything that hurts a kid, okay? And I think too many kids grow up with that behavior. If they're bigger and you hit, you get to win the battle. The love and logic people are not the first people that define the 3 different styles of parenting. One book I had talked about parents who are brick walls, parents who are jellyfish, and parents who are backbones. What are those styles of parent? What's a brick wall parent? He has the same rules for everything. No give, no take, there are consequences. You run into a brick wall, every time you get the same consequences. What's a jellyfish parent? Jellyfish parent is a parent that, well, sometimes there are rules, sometimes they're not. I go whichever way the wind blows or however I feel that day. A backbone parent is somebody who can be stiff and rigid when they have to be, but flexible when they don't have to be. The love and logic people define the terms drill sergeant, and I think it's easy to draw the analogy between a drill sergeant and a brick wall. Helicopter parents. And helicopter parents are ones that you see delivering school lunch bags to kids in school, typing their kids' paper because it's too late at night, delivering their kids' book they left home, trumpet to school, you name it, rescuing their kids right and left. And the third style is a consultant parent. And the consultant parent is easy for me to understand because as a physician, I'm often asked to see patients, other doctors, kids, a variety of people as a consultant. Someone comes in to see me as a consultant, I listen to their problem, I say, here's my idea, and then I say thank you, and they can either follow my advice or not follow my advice. It's their choice, not mine. And I think as a consultant parent, what we'd like to do is move people more towards a consultant parent. There are problems with drill sergeant parents. I was raised by a drill sergeant parent. And I know my dad was one. When he said jump, he expected me to say how high on the way up, and there was no talking back. And truthfully, I probably was pretty good as a little kid. The problem with children who've been raised by drill sergeants is they all too soon learn it's really easy when you're an adolescent to turn this to this, which is what drill sergeant kids tend to do. And I went through a period of time in my adolescence when, oh, thank you, I didn't talk to my folks for like weeks on end because we had these huge battles. And I'm thinking, this is really nuts, you know. Looking back, you know, I had good grades. You know, my biggest problem was I stayed out late stayed out like 2 hours late past my curfew on the first date I ever went out with this girl. But I always tell people I got even with my parents. They grounded me for 2 weeks. The only time in my life I was ever grounded. But I always tell people I got even with my parents because I ended up marrying her. So, so be careful what grounding can lead to. But I was really raised by that, and we had huge battles when I was an adolescent because my parents would say, do it this way, and I, being a little bit rebellious, would say, no, I'll do it my way. And then when I had my own kids, what did I say? I said, I want kids that say, when I say jump, they say how high on the way up. And so what the sad thing is drill sergeant parents, even though they go through, drill sergeant raised kids, even though they go through a rebellious stage in adolescence, when they have their own kids, they open their mouths and their parents' words come out. The problem with helicopter raised kids is a little different. Helicopter raised kids are often really nice kids that go with the flow. They never worry about what's happening. They never have to make a decision because who's going to? Mom's behind there. In fact, I really worried about our best friends. One of our best friends, the kids did their homework in the kitchen table with mom sitting at the kitchen table with them. Mom knit, crocheted, whatever other kids are doing at the kitchen table. And I had real worry about those kids going off to college, not have mom sitting there doing their homework. Well, it turns out those kids are absolutely brilliant, and they've done extremely well, and all my worries were fraught. But I was worried, is this a really helicopter mom, and her kids are going to go off to college, and do what a lot of them do, which is what I call the UW-Madison, URock, Whitewater, UW-Madison 6.5-year program. And that goes like this. These kids do well in school because their parents are saying, now you can be home at 9 o'clock because you've got homework, and I want you in bed by 10. And show me your homework to make sure it's done, and you've got a test coming up Friday, so I want to make sure you study for it. Those kids, yeah, mom always worries about me. I don't have to worry about anything on my life because those moms are. What happens when they go to college? They, in fact, people have said we should have our kids live by college rules before they go to college. And for those of you who have gone to college, what are college rules? There aren't any, are there? And so when kids go to college who've always been used to someone telling them what to do, how to think, etc., they have to college and they go, whoa, my life is suddenly free. And they have what I call, for those of you who are old enough, Mad Magazine used to have this guy Alfred E. Newman on the cover of it always. And Alfred E. Newman was sort of like the, I don't know, Beavis and Butthead or of my generation. But anyway, he always had this what me worry look. And he had no worries, and that's what these kids often go to college, and they have no worries about what they're doing, and there's no one saying you better be home, you got to get up for class, get your homework done, and all that kind of stuff. And so they go to Madison in their first semester, they get like about a 1.2 GPA out of Madison, and that doesn't quite cut it. So they come home and the parents go, well, you got to do something. So they send them down to URock, and they go to URock for a semester, and they kind of hang in there, and then they go to Whitewater, and they get their grades back, good enough to get back to Madison to finish in about a 6.5-year program. And someone said for kids that have had really, really nice, and I've never met a helicopter parent I didn't like. They are the sweetest, kindest parent. They would do anything for their kids. And their kids grow up, and it takes them, someone had said, about a month for every year of age to learn responsibility. And so trying to shortcut that, I would like to help us not be drill sergeant parents whose kids go through a rebellious stage in teenage years, in which case parents say, I've had parents ask me, is there such thing as retroactive birth control? I said, yeah, but not 13 years ago, but I mean, not 13 years later. And the helicopter parents whose kids go off to college and cannot understand how a kid who did so well in school can absolutely do so poorly in college. And I think those are often the kids that have grown up in a helicopter environment. So the hallmark of love and logic parenting is to try to teach kids, someone said to make every decision in their life by the time they're in about 6th grade, and learn to live by the consequences of their actions. And the quicker I can teach my kids to think about their actions and make choices, the younger they start, the price tags are always much smaller when you're a kid. What's the price tag if you forget your mittens on the way to primary school? Not very great. What's the price tag, tag if you forget to pay your car payment when you're 18 years old? You might have your car repossessed. So price tags when kids are little are always cheaper. And as a parent, when we moved into the love and logic approach, we were always looking for ways to let our kids have to suffer the consequences. And in fact, the important thing, that if there are 3 words of love and logic parent, I would say it is sadness, empathy, and consequences. And I say that, and I'll sadness and empathy and consequences. And you can start when your kid's 3 years old, and the kid, you serve him a casserole, takes 1 bite and goes yuck, tips the plate over. A lot of people, the drill sergeant parents would tip it over and say, you got to eat this. The helicopter mom would say, all right, I'll make you macaroni and cheese. And what I would do with my kids at this point, knowing what I do, is I say, oh, all done. Get them up, scrape the plate off, and send them on their way and say, run along, have a good time. Because I know an SLO is coming an hour later when they come back and say something particularly bright, like, oh, I'm hungry. In which case, I can say, oh, I'm sorry you're hungry. I got the sadness part out, right? That's how I feel when I don't eat supper. Empathy. Consequences. Don't worry about it. We'll have a good breakfast. And in fact, my kids would mock that frequently if they said, I don't like, whatever we were serving. And they would say, oh yeah, we'll have a good breakfast, I suppose. And so we trained our kids that, eat what's put in front of you. Now, a lot of parents can't send their kid to bed without eating supper. Although I will tell the truth, I have never lost a kid overnight that went to bed without eating. I've had a few parents I was worried might not make it through the morning, worrying, but the kids have done okay with it. But I think the concept of empathy, sadness, and consequences. The other issue, I think, in parenting is to give away as much control of decisions to our kids as we can. And it sounds almost wimpy if I'm going to give control away to my kids that I'm being a wimpy parent. However, what we do is give kids control, but I get to pick the choices. And so we try to share the control, let the kids be involved in the decision making, let the consequences do the teaching, and at the same time maintain the kid's self-concept. Example, parents are at McDonald's, you want to get out of there, the kid sitting has taken 1 bite out of their hamburger, okay? A drill sergeant parent would say, eat that hamburger, okay? The helicopter mom would be trying to shove the food in his mouth, here's an airplane, whatever, would you like a cheeseburger instead of a hamburger, whatever? And a consultant parent would say, you know what, my car leaves in 5 minutes, there's 2 ways you can come with us. One is hungry, one is full. And the truth is, either way is okay with me, and let the kid make the decision. Kids will learn by the consequence of that. The concept of giving kids choices is probably the best way to deal with kids, and it starts at relatively young ages. The kid's screaming, carrying on a fit. Would you rather, you can say to your child, would you rather be quiet in here, or would you rather be noisy somewhere else, right? 2 consequences, kid gets to make the choice. I'd rather be quiet in here, or by his actions may say I'll be noisy someplace else. I can put him someplace else. I think there's lots of ways we can come up with choices for our kids. And it starts when the kids are little. I have parents having fights with their kids about getting their clothes on. You can often defer that to a kid. Do you want to wear this pair of pants or this pair of pants? Do you want to wear this shirt or this shirt? Do you want to put your shoes on, or do you want to carry it? Do you want a hat on your head, or do you want the hat in your pocket? You get kids so busy making decisions that they forget that they wanted to battle in the first place. I've used that strategy for kids that didn't want to go to school. I said, you know what? Give this kid so many choices for kids that really did not want to go to school. I'm running, you want to wear this, do you want that, do you want cornflakes or Wheaties, do you want the green bowl, the red bowl, which glass do you want? I've had kids making so many decisions by school. Parents had them out the door on the way to school before the kid even realized it. And so I think you can often use that choices thing to make a lot of your life easier. And what it's doing, it's giving away control. I don't need a lot of that control. And yet we tend as parents to often control it because we say, I want you to wear this, I want you to get your clothes on first, you know, I wanted you to brush your teeth. And so in a lot of ways you can get kids to do a lot of stuff that they don't know, that they don't maybe want to do by offering choices with it. But there's a way to offer choices. You'd like to offer choices that you can live with. Usually with little kids, you give them two choices. You don't say to the kid at McDonald's, are you going to eat, would you rather eat your hamburger or do you want us to leave without you? Obviously, if you do that, the kid knows he just won the battle because he's obviously going to pick that leave without me. And so I think you got to make sure the choices are ones you can live with. If the kid won't make the choice, you need to be willing to make it. What's really horrible is a parent who says, now come on, are you going to eat that or are you going to go away hungry? Make a decision. And the kid's going, well, this is good. In fact, sometimes I think kids enjoy the show that parents put on when we really get frustrated. And so you need to be willing to make that decision in about 10 minutes if the kid isn't. I think we need to allow kids to suffer the consequence, to not suffer, allow kids to experience the consequence of their choices. And so if a kid, would you rather, you know, eat this or go run and play? If the kid wants to run and play, there's a consequence to that, which is I'm going to be hungry later on. I think we need to be willing to do that. And again, it is empathy, sadness that drives the point of the consequences home. That takes a little bit back to the no talking, no emotion parts of 1, 2, 3 magic, because there's a lot of parents whose kids would come back an hour later going, I'm hungry. And the parent says, well, if you'd eaten supper, you wouldn't be hungry. You know, I spent a lot of time slaving. I made that special for you, whatever. And so parents get into this worry. Then the kid can start arguing with the parents, well, that isn't my favorite food. Why didn't you make me macaroni and cheese? You can get these arguments back and forth where the learning of the lesson is lost. And so trying to let kids suffer the consequences is really helpful. When do you not give your kid choices? If it's morally threatening or life-threatening. Had a mom in the office one time, she was going to let her, I think it was 13-year-old daughter, go camping for the weekend up north with her 16-year-old boyfriend. I fell off my chair on purpose at the office. And that is a morally threatening thing. You do not say to your daughter, that's an option you have. I would not let my child run out into the street. I wouldn't let my child ride a bicycle without a helmet. I don't care how much you wanted to, because that's life-threatening. And my kids, with bicycle helmets, we had a rule in my house. First time I catch you riding a bicycle without a helmet, you lose the bicycle for 1 day. The second time it's 2 days. The third time it's 4 days. And my kids had done this thing, you know, hey, would you just give me a penny for allowance on the first day of the month, and then 2 cents on the second day of the month, and then 4 cents on the third day of the month? Trying to get you to say yes, not realizing it's going to cost you $32 million or something by the end of the month. And so my kids knew that exponential game from this little calendar thing. And so I don't think we ever got beyond 4 days without riding a bicycle before my kids finally went, you know what, he's not going to cave in. I might as well wear my helmet when I ride the bicycle. I think the way we deliver these kinds of messages is really important too. In fact, I try to tell people, and I put some pet phrases down, hey, which would you rather, which would work better for you? Feel free to, you're welcome to. I try to tell kids what they can do and not what they can't do. I also tell them what I will do, not what I won't do. My favorite example of this, which I hope isn't any of you have been victims of it, but I have parents who call me and say, my kid's got 103 fever, I want some antibiotics. Now, I don't usually prescribe antibiotics over the telephone, but I don't say to parents, I'm not going to prescribe antibiotics over the telephone. So I'll say, what's wrong with you? I said, listen, let me tell you what I'll do. You know, I'll set up an appointment for you to come in the office tomorrow. I'll call the emergency room if you think it needs to be done tonight. You can try Tylenol, ibuprofen, call me back if it's not better. And I give parents 2 or 3 choices, and you know what? I always get off the phone and they don't go, but what about my antibiotics? Because I have told them what I will do, not what I won't do. And I think I have parents, except the group in this room probably, I think I have parents who are happier because I have this is what I will do, not what I won't do. and I think that works well with our kids too. So delivery is important, and again, trying to keep the emotion out of it. Other issues, often kids want to get into control battles with us. What's a control battle? That's who's in charge, you or me. And the issue of control battles is, the rule you want to remember when you realize you're getting into a control battle with the kids is, I want to avoid them at all costs, okay? So whenever you feel like you're getting a control battle coming with kids, the first thing you want to pop in your head is control at all costs. There's some control battles you can't avoid, and so if you have to win a control battle, I want my kid to know anytime he gets in a battle with a parent, the parent always wins. And the third thing of that is there are some control battles you cannot win. We tried to win one with my daughter. We wanted her to eat one creamed green bean one time. My daughter was kind of a picky eater. Eat one creamed green bean, you get to get up. Well, she ate it, then she threw up all over the table. Nobody in my house will eat creamed green beans anymore, myself included. I look at them and I think of that. So control battles, often when we're raising kids, have to do with smooth muscle. What's smooth muscle? Swallowing and elimination, right? You cannot make a kid poop on the pot. You can't make a kid pee anywhere you want, and you can't make a kid swallow anything you want. So you might as well avoid those battles. You can also not make a kid stop crying. You can't put a kid to sleep either. And if you put yourself to sleep, and you figure a way to put your kids to sleep. I can put people to sleep by giving lectures, but I can't. I never could put my kids to sleep. So I think it's control battles, avoid them. There is and never get in an argument with a kid when they're angry. There's a rule that says never argue with a drunk. When your kid's so emotionally upset, their brain is like being drunk. Same thing, when we get emotionally upset parenting, we can act like we're somebody who's drunk. And never argue at that point. Save words for quiet times. So that's it. The other comments I put, a couple little things that I really liked. Saying no. We should say no to our kids as little as possible, as often as necessary, and mean it when we say it. How often do kids come home and say, Mom, I want to go here or there? You say, no, this, and after they brain drain us for a while, and brain drain is one of those strategies, kids look, my friends are all going to go. Don't you want me to have friends? Yes, I want you to have friends, but no, you still can't go. Well, so-and-so said they could, they would bring me home, and you end up, finally you get so exhausted arguing with your kids, you go, all right, just go, I don't care. And so if you say no, let your no be your no, and mean it when you say it, and don't let your kids brain drain you. Alternatives to no are yes later. The one I liked best was convince me, because then I'm suddenly, who am I brain draining? My kid, and my kid's suddenly going, whoa, and I have to come up with these reasons. And no matter how many good reasons my kids would come up with, I could always say, I'm not convinced, okay? And so I could do that. And a third one is, let me think about it. And if you need the task done, you could say, let me think about it, and while I'm thinking about it, maybe you could go straighten your room up, okay? And so you could sometimes work that one to get kids to do things for you. The next two things I think are key parts of the love and logic. One of them is teaching thinking skills. And the truth is, I don't think anybody teaches us thinking skills, but we can teach thinking skills to our kids. And I put italics on the teaching part because I think it is a teaching thing. What's a teaching thinking skills? Your kid messes up, empathy, sadness, sorry that happened, you must have been angry. Gee, I'm sorry for you. Second part of it, what are you going to do about it? To a kid, what are you going to do about it? The answer you're usually going to get is something like, I don't know. At that point, you can say, well, do you want to hear what some other kids have done or what other people might suggest? And sometimes kids will say no and say, fine, run along then, good luck. But sometimes kids go, yeah, I'll listen. So you can throw out 2 or 3 different examples. And then you can work through those examples with the kids. Say, how would that work out? Okay, so-and-so hit me at school. Wow, this, and then I hit him back, and then I got a detention. Wow, you must have been mad. What else what could have been done? You can certainly work through things you could have done. Well, you could have kicked him first. How would that have worked out? You could, let the air out of his bicycle tire. How would that work out? Go through a bunch of things. And then the bottom line is to say, good luck, give them permission to solve it. And sometimes you can say, I'll be happy to hear how it works out. Sometimes you can say, I don't have to be happy with it. Personal examples of that, I got a phone call from the president of the bank in town. I sent my kid down to the bank when he was, I don't know how old, with the time card and said, hey, get some money out of the time machine for me, okay? So I came down. While he was down, he took the camera and he turned it the other direction. And of course, the bank knew who it was because they saw this kid and they had my card. So he called and said, any chance a kid just, I said, yeah, that was my son, he's down there. And so he called me and said, well, you know, he was all upset. I said, well, hey, do me a favor, I'll make the deal. I'll get my kid back to you. So I went to talk to my son. I said, well, you know, we can ground you for the, no, not ground. We went through several things, and my son finally decided the best thing was to go down to the bank and talk to the person at the bank about what happened. And he did. You know what? I've never heard how that conversation went out. But I know he would never do it again. That same son, my wife would always buy winter coats in the spring, you know, when they're on sale. In the fall of the year, they had a basketball game when he was in, I think, about 6th grade or 7th grade. In Milton, he comes home with a sweatshirt on like a, you know, nice fall day. Where's your coat? I don't know. So we went through the steps, you know, what would you like to, you know, what could you do for your coat? We brainstormed all these things. He decided he called the bus company in Milton. No, they didn't have it. He called the school in Milton. They didn't have it. And then we kind of left him on his own. Next thing we knew, he was wearing his brother's old worn-out coat. And he wore it the whole winter. We never said a word. Until that next spring when my wife bought the kids new coats. And like the first day he went to school, they were playing basketball and all the coats were in a corner. My wife went to pick him up and the kids had hidden his new coat. And they finally gave him his coat. And he says, because you guys don't know how much trouble I've had with coats. And I think trying to teach kids thinking skills, you know, how to brainstorm ideas, how to think through if each idea would work out, and then letting them have the ability to make the decision, no matter whether it's a good decision or a bad decision. And truthfully, when you're 12 years old, how bad a decision are you going to get for, you know, turning the camera on a time machine or losing your jacket? You do that when you're 22 years old. It wouldn't have been the bank president calling you, it would be the police officer showing up at your door. So I think anytime we can teach kids thinking skills and let them learn to live by the consequences, we really steer our kids into a much better decision. The other thing that is really important, and I really try to get people to memorize these stages, is teaching kids to learn responsibility. Can you teach someone to be responsible? I don't think you can. You know, I always love really badly behaved kids in school because not only, there's two curriculums in school. One is knowledge, and that's pouring facts into kids' heads. The teachers do that very well. The other one is wisdom. And really bad behaved kids learn wisdom in a different way than the rest of the kids do, don't they? They learn it because of their actions and misactions. And I think all of us know we learn best when we really mess up and screw up. And so the steps of learning responsibility is give a kids an opportunity to do it. Hope they blow it. Why would I hope kids blow it? If I hope they blow it, I'm not going to put too much effort into making sure they're successful. That's for all the helicopter moms in the room, okay? And if they blow it, I know there's a much better SLO than if they are successful. And the good thing about our kids is they have lots and lots of opportunities to do things and to blow it. The third step is provide empathy for their suffering, the consequences of their action. And the fourth step is to have them try it again. The example that I have heard and I have seen over and over and over again. Go to an airport, they have all those little string things between the lines, you know, you got to stand in line. And it's the same at banks, Walt Disney World, anywhere else. What happens to some kid? Some kid grabs a hold of it and tries to swing on it, right? Tips about 4 poles over, right? All those poles go clattering down. Do you think there's any way in the world that kid's going to do that again? No way. What does every parent in that situation do? Grabs a kid, you come over here and stand by me and don't you move. As if the kid isn't bright enough to learn that you don't swing on those things. And so what I think often happens when kids do something, it doesn't turn out well, instead of being a parent that is empathetic, sorry for the consequences, and letting them learn by their mistakes, we get involved in the decision. So the kid's mad because I pulled them away, I've been, you know, whatever. And the truth is, as a parent, I think we often feel embarrassed when our kids misbehave in public. My favorite story of that is when I was first in practice, I had gone to Kmart. While I was on call, I had 3 kids, Molly, Jay, and Jack. Molly was in the shopping cart, Jay and Jack were kind of hanging along, and I got paged to the hospital for an emergency. So I'm talking to some patient, to the nurse in ICU about some patient who's croaking, and my boys tipped the shopping cart over on my daughter. So suddenly, I grabbed kids, I'm like lining them up against the front counter, and I'm talking, and I'm just threatening that, they know that Dad's not happy, he's threatening with their lives. I heard about that for years, how I had, and I think, what, I don't go to Kmart to make friends with all the people there. I don't go to stand in line at the airport to make friends with the people. And so I don't care if my kid would, now I would say I wouldn't care if my kid takes 2 times to figure out to tip those things over, those, I don't know what they call it, the velvet ropes over. I think getting our kids a chance to do something, hope they blow it, empathy and sadness for the consequence, and give a chance to do it again. And I think a lot of times as parents, we are reluctant to give our kids the chance to do it again. And so I think teaching thinking skills and learning responsibility is really an important thing. Now, a little mishmash of things that I've thrown in here is helpful ideas. I think we need to avoid mini lectures. What is a mini lecture? It's telling somebody what they already knew. If you put your coat on, if you'd taken a coat to school, you wouldn't have been cold. If you put your boots on, you wouldn't have wet feet. If you ate supper, you wouldn't be hungry. If you went to the bathroom before you went to bed, you might not have wet it, who knows. But I think we tell mini lectures to kids all the time. And mini lectures divert the kids' learning from the consequence of their action to arguing with their parents. Oh yeah, you wait, I'm never gonna wear my coat. And so we steer it away from learning the lesson to getting into a control battle back and forth with parents. Implied put-downs. All too often I see and hear people do implied put-downs. What's an implied put-down? It's something like, do I have to tell you everything? Why can't you behave? I think that maybe one of the worst implied, kind of an implied put-down, and also avoiding the language of what I call respect, is to tell a kid to shut up. And I mean, when a parent tells a kid to shut up, I don't think you see a kid in his eye going, whoa, I've really got my parents frazzled. I think you see a kid that's kind of feels like a little bit of a dagger in the heart. And I think one of the benefits of the love and logic parenting is it lets us raise kids with a sense of respect. And as part of the idea of, somebody talked about the trusted neighbor test. Discipline your kid the way you would your best friend's kid. I would treat my best friend's kids probably better than I treat my own kids. And I would certainly not do something that was disrespectful. I'd be much less likely to tell my neighbor's kid, my best friend's kid, to shut up. But people tend to do it to their own kids. So I think the language of respect and dignity and implied put-downs. Implied put-downs tend to be questions for which we really don't want an answer. There is a concept of thinking words versus fighting words. Thinking words are, hey, which would be better for you? Feel free to. Fighting words where you pick that up now, or I mean it. I mean, those are words that put the kid ready to battle with us. And we'd really like a kid to stop and think about their actions, not be ready to fight. I mentioned before about telling kids what you will do, what you won't do. One of my favorite examples of that is, you want the kid to clean up his bedroom. Kid says, oh yeah, and in a room for 2 hours. Mom, I gotta go to soccer practice. It's easy to say it to a kid, I'll be happy to take you to soccer practice as soon as your room is clean. That's an enforceable statement, and it's done with dignity and respect. Kid may try to brain drain us. I'll be happy to take you to soccer practice as soon as your room is clean. So I think there's a lot more kindness, gentleness in the love and logic approach. And the advantages, one of the advantages of it is, I think, as we do it, we do raise kids that are responsible things. My kids actually went to high school in Madison, and my son learned you can rent a trombone for 1 day from Ward Brott. Cost $12. My daughter learned you can borrow the conductor's violin if you forget yours at home. And I'm amazed at some of the other things. My kids learned in Madison how to ride a bus, how to get from all over Madison when they were 9th graders to get what they needed because they had forgot stuff home. And when you send your kid to Madison, it's not like I forgot my paper at home, could you fax it in? No, we didn't. And so I think, I was very happy when I had kids to the level of high school. I thought, oh, that's a good decision. And I find out how my kids would solve stuff, because we would not run a trombone into my son. When he had band concert that night, we would let him be with, or whatever, or band class. And so we really gave our kids a chance to do things, let them blow it, and let them serve the way out of it. And I think that's been helpful, and that I, knock on wood, got 4 kids out of high school without any arrests or DUIs or anything. The last thing I think it is important in parenting that we really want to raise kids who have a sense of, they look in the mirror and they say, I like what I see. We struggle with a lot of people, especially teenage girls. You know, I have boys, 9th grade boys come in, you know, they're fat, you know, their parts are tiny. You look and go, yuck, and they look in the mirror and they go, yeah, I'm a 10. And then you have the most outstanding girls that look in the mirror and they go, I'm a 2. And so I think trying to help kids build their self-concept. One of the best things we can do is to give kids chances to do things and learn by their actions. And I think developing self-concept is extremely important. There is three-legged stool of self-concept. I know I'm into three-legged stools. I'm loved by the magic people in my life. Magic people is anyone you look up to. You know, I mean, I love going to a grade school. I go down to a grade school. All these kids know me, Dr. Williams. They want to give me high five or bump knuckles. You know, it's great. I'm a magic people. Policemen are magic people. Ministers, nurses, parents are magic people to kids. And you want kids to feel like they're loved by the magic people in their lives. You want kids to say, I have the skills, I need to make it, and I'm capable of taking control in my life. And if I can raise kids that have that concept internalized, then I think we've done a pretty good job of parenting. And so I think from basic German Shepherd to 1, 2, 3 magic techniques to the love and logic techniques, I think they naturally grow up with their kids. I think we all learn how to adapt to them. And I think what I hope is that when parents see their kids, they can calm that emotion and say, how can I turn this into a learning opportunity for my kids, no matter what age they are? And I think that's probably the key to successful parenting. And as I said before, the problem with parenting is once you get really good at it, you soon become unemployed.